From a high school chemistry teacher worried about his family's future to someone responsible for the deaths of innocent people who had nothing to do with the drug trade. In this video, we're breaking down every time Walter White killed an innocent person in Breaking Bad. First up, Drew Sharp, the 14-year-old witness. Walter White orchestrated a train heist that directly led to the death of a 14-year-old boy who witnessed the robbery. In Season 5, Episode 5, titled Dead Fright, Walt, Jesse Pinkman, and Todd Alquist executed a methylamine heist from a freight train in the New Mexico desert. The plan involved stopping the train by blocking a railroad crossing with a staged broken down dump truck, then draining methylamine from a tanker car while simultaneously pumping water back in it to maintain the weight. Before the heist, Walt emphasized to Todd that under no circumstances could anyone know about the robbery. The operation succeeded, and the three men celebrated their victory in the desert. At that moment, 14-year-old Drew Sharp appeared on his dirt bike. He had been riding through the desert and stopped when he saw them. Drew waved at the three men. Todd waved back, then immediately drew his pistol and shot Drew once in the chest, killing him instantly. Despite Jesse's scream for Todd to stop, it was too late. To ensure that Drew never was found by authorities, the group dissolved his corpse and motorcycle in hydrofluoric acid at the Vamanos Pest facility. Walt created the conditions that led to Drew's death. He personally told Todd that nobody could ever know about the heist. He also chose to continue the heist when Mike Ehrmantraut pleaded with him to abort because the timeline was collapsing. After Drew's death, Jesse demanded Todd be fired from the operation. Walt and Mike ultimately decided against firing Todd, keeping him on the payroll. Walt chose to continue working with the person who murdered a child rather than face the consequences of shutting down the operation. Drew Sharp's death sits squarely on Walt's shoulders. He didn't pull the trigger, but he set every domino in motion. He designed the heist, insisted they push forward despite risk, made it clear no witnesses could exist, and then protected the killer afterward. Before we get into how Walt's actions caused the single deadliest incident in the entire series, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss on any of our other Breaking Bad breakdowns. But Drew Sharp wasn't even close to Walt's highest body count. I mean, it was just one guy. That distinction belongs to something Walt never saw coming. Walter White's decision to let Jane Margulis die directly caused an air traffic control error that killed 167 people in a mid-air collision. In Season 2, Episode 12, titled Phoenix, Walt went to Jesse's apartment and found Jesse and his girlfriend, Jane Margulis, unconscious after using heroin. While attempting to wake Jesse, Walt accidentally knocked Jane onto her back. She began choking on her own vomit. Walt started to help her, hesitated, then made the conscious choice to let her die. He watched her asphyxiate. The next morning, Jesse woke up to find Jane dead beside him. Jane's father, Donald Margulis, was a 19-year veteran air traffic controller at the FAA Air Route Traffic Control Center in Albuquerque. After Jane's death, Donald took a 5-week absence from work. When he returned, still grief-stricken and distracted, Donald made a catastrophic directional error. He failed to direct charter plane JM-21 out of the path of Wayfarer Flight 515, a Boeing 737 commercial airliner. The two planes collided directly over Albuquerque. All 167 people on board both aircraft were killed. According to reports in the show, this made it the 15th worst aviation disaster in history. Debris, luggage, and human remains rained down across Albuquerque, including into Walt's backyard pool where a burned pink teddy bear landed. The chain of causation runs directly from Walt to the collision. Walt let Jane die because he viewed her as a threat to his control over Jesse and his meth operation. Jane had been blackmailing Walt for Jesse's share of their earnings and was planning to take Jesse away from the drug business. By eliminating Jane, Walt believed that he was protecting his operation. He couldn't have predicted the plane crash, but he made a calculated decision to let an innocent person die for his own benefit. That decision set everything else in motion. Donald Margulis returned to work too soon because he was trying to distract himself from unbearable grief. His colleagues suggested that he take the day off, but he refused. While on duty, Donald's grief caused him to make mistakes, including accidentally reading Jane Mike 21 instead of Juliet Mike 21 before catching himself. The distraction proved fatal. The collision happened because a father couldn't focus on his job after losing his only daughter. Walt killed 167 people the moment he chose to watch Jane die. The plane crash wasn't an accident. It was the inevitable consequence of destroying a father by taking his daughter away. Walt later tried to rationalize the crash during a school assembly, comparing the death toll to larger disasters and dismissing it as statistically insignificant. That speech revealed everything about how Walt viewed collateral damage by that point in the series. What do you think was Walt's worst act? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because we're not done yet. Killing 167 strangers was horrific, yes, but Walt's next move proved that he'd cross any line, even when it meant poisoning a child to manipulate his partner. Walter White intentionally poisoned a 6-year-old child to manipulate Jesse Pinkman into helping him kill Gustavo Fring. In Season 4, Episode 12, titled End Times, 6-year-old Brock Cantillo, the son of Jesse's girlfriend Andrea, was rushed to the hospital with a severe illness. Jesse immediately believed Brock had been poisoned with ricin, a poison Walt had previously created. Jesse's ricin cigarette had gone missing, and he became convinced that Walt had stolen it and used it to poison Brock as punishment for Jesse getting too close to Gus Fring. When Jesse confronted Walt with a gun, Walt convinced him that Gus must have been responsible for the poisoning. This turned Jesse against Gus completely. In Season 4, Episode 13, titled Face Off, after Gus was killed, doctors revealed that Brock hadn't been poisoned with ricin at all. He had consumed berries from a lily of the valley plant, which children sometimes eat because of their sweet taste. The episode's final shot revealed a lily of the valley plant sitting in Walt's backyard. In Season 5, Jesse eventually figured out that Walt had orchestrated the poisoning when he realized Saul Goodman's bodyguard, Gil Babineau, had pickpocketed items from him twice, once to steal the ricin cigarette and once to take his marijuana. Walt later confessed to Jesse that he had indeed poisoned Brock. Series creator Vince Gilligan confirmed at the San Diego Comic-Con that Walt most likely poisoned Brock by putting the berries extract in his juice box at school. Walt poisoned a 6-year-old child to manipulate Jesse's emotions. At the time, Jesse had promised Gus that Walt wouldn't be killed, which gave Walt some protection, but that assurance wasn't enough for Walt. He needed Jesse completely on his side to have any chance of killing Gus. The only way to accomplish that was to make Jesse believe that Gus had harmed Brock. Walt chose a poison that would mimic ricin's symptoms but was less likely to be fatal. He wanted Brock sick, not dead, because a dead child wouldn't serve his purpose. This demonstrated cold calculation. Walt didn't poison Brock in a moment of panic or desperation. He planned it methodically. He grew the lily of the valley plant in his backyard. He had Saul's bodyguard steal the ricin cigarette to make Jesse think it was used on Brock. He knew exactly what emotional buttons to push to turn Jesse into a weapon against Gus. Brock survived and made a full recovery, but that doesn't diminish what Walt did. He looked at a 6-year-old child and saw a tool for manipulation. Poisoning Brock marked the point where many viewers believed Walt became irredeemable. He had killed in self-defense before. He let Jane die to protect his operation, but deliberately harming a child to manipulate his partner? That proved that Walt would sacrifice anyone to maintain power. Even after Jesse discovered the truth, Walt never expressed genuine remorse. When Jesse confronted him in Season 5, Walt's only concern was maintaining his cover story. Walt's ruthlessness didn't develop overnight. It started much earlier with a choice that should have been simple but revealed who he really was. Walt made the conscious decision to watch Jane Margulis die when he could have easily saved her life. In Season 2, Episode 12, titled Phoenix, Jane Margulis was Jesse Pinkman's girlfriend and landlord. She was a recovering heroin addict who had relapsed after starting a relationship with Jesse. Jane had recently blackmailed Walt into giving Jesse his share of their meth earnings, roughly $180,000 in cash. She planned to use the money to take Jesse away from the drug business and Walt's influence. The night after receiving the money, Jane and Jesse celebrated by using the last of their heroin. They both passed out in Jesse's apartment. Walt, who had been drinking at a bar where he coincidentally met and talked with Jane's father, Donald, about family, decided to go to Jesse's apartment to reconcile with him. Walt found Jesse and Jane unconscious. While attempting to shake Jesse awake, Walt accidentally knocked Jane onto her back. She immediately began choking on her own vomit due to heroin overdose. Walt's immediate instinct was to help her. He moved towards her, then stopped. For several seconds, he stood frozen, watching Jane asphyxiate. His face showed the internal calculation happening in real time. Then, he made his choice. He stepped back and let her die. The scene showed Walt's face as he watched Jane's final moments, tears in his eyes, but he didn't intervene. The next morning, Jesse woke up to find Jane dead beside him, believing that she had died from the overdose alone. Walt let Jane die because she threatened his control over Jesse. Jane had convinced Jesse that Walt was manipulating him. She had blackmailed Walt for money. Most importantly, she was planning to take Jesse far away, which would have ended Walt's meth operation. By letting Jane die, Walt eliminated the threat to his business and regained complete control over Jesse. The death devastated Jesse and pushed him back into Walt's orbit as his only source of stability. Walt rationalized the decision as protecting Jesse from a bad influence who was enabling his drug use, but that justification was transparent. Jane was actually trying to get clean with Jesse. They were planning to enter rehab together. Walt didn't let Jane die to protect Jesse. He let her die to protect his empire. The scene was significant because Walt's hesitation showed he understood the enormity of what he was doing. He knew it was wrong. He did it anyway. Actor Bryan Cranston later revealed that filming the scene devastated him because while imagining his own daughter in Jane's place, he captured the genuine horror of the moment. Cranston said that it was the most harrowing scene he filmed in the entire series. Jane's death was Walter White's first truly calculated murder. He hadn't pulled a trigger yet, but he made a conscious choice to let an innocent person die for his own benefit. Everything that followed in the series traced back to this moment. By letting Jane die, Walt didn't just kill her. He killed Donald Margulis's only child, which led to the plane crash. He traumatized Jesse in a way that never healed. He revealed that when faced with a choice between saving a life and protecting his interests, he would always choose himself. Walter White was responsible for the deaths of at least 168 innocent people throughout Breaking Bad. Drew Sharp, a 14-year-old kid who happened to witness a train heist, 167 passengers and crew aboard 2 planes that collided because an air traffic controller couldn't function after losing his daughter, and Jane Margulis, a young woman trying to build a life with Jesse Pinkman. Walt also poisoned 6-year-old Brock Cantillo, who survived but only because Walt calculated the dose carefully enough to manipulate Jesse without actually killing the child. None of these people were involved in the drug trade. None of them posed a direct threat to Walt. They died because Walt valued his empire more than their lives. Drew Sharp died because Walt insisted on completing a dangerous heist and then protected the man who murdered him. The Wayfarer 515 passengers died because Walt chose to let Jane asphyxiate rather than lose control over Jesse. Brock nearly died because Walt needed to turn Jesse into a weapon against Gus Fring. Jane died because Walt decided his meth operation mattered more than her life. Walt told himself that he was doing everything for his family. He claimed his cancer diagnosis and need to provide for them after his death justified his choices. But by the end, that excuse had worn completely thin. Walt admitted to Skyler in the series finale that he did it all because he liked it and was good at it. He did it for himself. The innocent people who died along the way were just collateral damage in Walter White's transformation from Mr. White to Heisenberg. And that might be the most horrifying part. Walt didn't set out to kill innocent people. He just valued his pride and power more than their lives. When given the choice between doing the right thing and protecting his interests, he chose himself every single time. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to subscribe with notifications on so you don't miss our next analysis. And check out our video on why Dexter's mistakes versus the real-life FBI aren't even close.